Contrary to 45, or the fake President Donald Trump's June claims, the coronavirus is not going away anytime soon. Trump's coronavirus-related lying spree appears to stay too, and it isn't going away anytime soon either on that part. The fake president's months-long bombardment of lies about the virus and the pandemic, many of them egregious, continued from early June to early July, a period that included his controversial Klan rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a series of interviews with faux news and other media outlets, and the events in the economy and the pandemic, and remarks in Texas, Arizona, Wisconsin, and at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. Um, Trump has made over 200 false claims, which means lies, in a total over a month, going from June 8th to damn near July 5th, an average of about 7 per day. 41 of those lies were about the virus and the pandemic, and by far the most of any subject. Um, Going from July 8th of last year until now, Trump is now up to 2,783 lies within just a 1 year span. But going from when he started squatting in the White House in January 2017, he's told over 20,000. Both of Trump's two most frequent individual lies during the 4-week period were about the pandemic. Trump made 15 lies about the relationship between testing and cases, claiming that testing is responsible for the recent spike in confirmed cases. That testing is causing cases to exist or something similar. You can click here for a detailed explanation of why his assertions are false, which I will probably do that later. He falsely claimed that 9 times that he had banned travel from China, though he imposed only a partial travel restriction. He has now made versions of this ban. Ban claimed 67 times more than any other pandemic-related false claim. Trump has made 26 total lies on the subject of the military, including 7 more versions of his regular lie that he was the one who got the Obama-era Veterans Choice Program created, which technically, like I said, yeah, because they already stated that Obama was the one that did the Veterans Choice Program, not Trump. Trump also made 25 total false claims about China, the individual country about which he is most frequently inaccurate about. There are 2 new entrants on the list of Trump's top 5 dishonesty subjects. The first was the protest, about which Trump made 25 claims that were lies during the 4-week period. Among other things, Trump falsely claimed 6 times that he was responsible for sending in the National Guard to quell riots in Minnesota. The Guard was activated by the state's Democratic governor, not Trump. Trump also promoted a wild conspiracy theory about a 75-year-old protester who was shoved to the ground by the Buffalo police. The second new entrant on the list was former Vice President Joe Biden, about whom Trump has made 24 lies about. Trump ramped up his attacks on the presumptive Democratic nominee, some of them wildly inaccurate. Trump had claimed that, for example, that Biden was given the reporter's news conference questions in advance, which is no, it was not, and that he read his answers off a teleprompter, which he did not. Biden has not left his basement. He has repeatedly left his home to campaign, and that Biden wants to prosecute Americans for going to church, which is wrong, but not for burning a church, also wrong. Trump's disastrous Tulsa, Oklahoma Klan rally, which involved empty seats, coronavirus infections, and for his staff and possibly others, and self-damaging Trump remarks about testing, was also a dishonest Klan rally. Trump made 22 lies during that Klan speech. He also made 22 lies. He also told 22 lies in a town hall event in Wisconsin with faux news host Sean Insanity, which was more like a conversation between Trump and Insanity, with occasional softball audience questions thrown in. He also made 14 lies apiece in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, and also a Klan speech in Phoenix to the conservative group Turning Point Action. Trump said of Biden, now he's already saying that he can't do debates because of the COVID-19. Do you believe it? I can't do the debates because of COVID. This is what Cheeto was saying. This is what he had said during that town hall event with faux news and faux news anchors Sean Insanity. The facts first on this. Trump's claim was entirely baseless. Biden had officially committed to participating in the 3 scheduled presidential debates, and Biden had repeatedly said he is eager to debate Trump even if the pandemic forces him to hold the event online rather than in person. Trump, conversely, has not officially committed to the scheduled debates. Instead, his campaign had been seeking changes to the debate schedule, and according to the New York Times, they sought an unusual role in selecting the moderators. You can read a longer fact check here. by clicking on this, but I don't have time to go through all of it. Trump claimed 4 times that Biden is not leaving his basement. For example, he said on Faux News on June 20th, Biden is still in the basement. He hasn't left it. Facts first, Biden is not stuck in his basement, even if his house even has one, I don't know. Since late May, Biden has repeatedly left his home to campaign. Biden, like Trump, has been forced by the pandemic to reduce his campaign schedule and travel, and he has campaigned cautiously, rising in the polls even as he has limited his public exposure. But the former vice president has made multiple trips since he emerged from his home to live Memorial Day wreath on May 25th, after more than 2 months without a public event. For example, Biden attended a June 1st community meeting at a Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Delaware, delivered in a June 2nd speech in Philadelphia about racism and leadership, and a June 5th economic address in Delaware, and he met with the family of George Floyd on June 8th in Houston, something that Trump hasn't done. And he also held a June 11th economic roundtable in Philadelphia and went to Pennsylvania on June 17th to meet with the business owners and to deliver a speech about the pandemic and the economy. Trump said of Biden, it's so crazy what's happening. Here's a guy who doesn't talk, nobody hears him. That was also something that he said at his at the town hall with Insanity. The facts first on this is that Trump is clearly exaggerating when he said that Biden doesn't talk. Again, Biden has campaigned cautiously. He has made speeches, done interviews, and spoken in various other forums. Hannity had asked Trump about Biden, having accused the president of xenophobia and fear-mongering the day his administration introduced travel restrictions on China. Biden's campaign says he was not referring to the restrictions in particular, and he did not even know about them when he spoke. This is what Trump claimed. Well, he didn't say it. They have people that write. He continued. He never said xenophobic because I don't think he knows what the word means. Neither do you. Facts first is that this claim was intended as a jab at Biden's intelligence or mental acuity, but it was just wrong. Biden did accuse Trump of xenophobia and fear-mongering in a speech in Iowa on January 31st. The fact that a speechwriter may have read the words does not change the fact that Biden did say it. Trump eventually conceded that Biden did call him xenophobic, but we're calling the claim false because the first claim twice in this paragraph that Biden did not do so. If Biden gets elected, your 401k money will be worthless. This is what Trump said at his Klan rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The fact is that this is just fucking nonsense. We don't know exactly what will happen if Biden wins, and we don't usually fact check predictions. But the claim that money itself will be worthless is laughable, and we'll ignore the extreme prediction about the 401ks and what happens to them. Biden's answer about cognitive testing. The interviewer Eric Bolling told Trump that someone at Biden's news conference had questioned Biden's mental acuity. A journalist had asked Biden if he had been tested for cognitive decline, and that Biden had responded that he can't wait to debate Trump. Trump has responded by telling Bolling that Biden had gotten mixed up on the question about a cognitive test, and that he had responded by confusedly saying he had been tested for COVID-19. Well, his response actually was, I get tested all the same, but he was talking about COVID, Trump said. Trump continued, he said, I get tested all the time, but I assumed that he was talking about the COVID, not cognitive, and now he's mixed up. The fact first is that Biden was not talking about COVID-19 in his response to this question about whether he's been tested for cognitive decline, and Biden did not mention the virus at all in this response. Rather, Biden responded by saying, I've been tested and I'm constantly tested. Look, all you gotta do is watch me, and I can hardly wait to compare my cognitive capability to the cognitive capability of the man I'm running against. Biden's deputy campaign manager, Kate Bedingfield, said on Faux News that Biden was arguing that his cognitive ability is constantly tested through the act of running for president, not revealing that he constantly receives literal cognitive tests. First of all, he's been tested every single day that he's been on the campaign trail. You know, he went through 12 debates in the Democratic primary. He defeated 25 other candidates to become the Democratic nominee, Bedingfield said. Whether or not you think the explanation makes sense, there is no indication at all that Biden was referring to COVID-19 tests. Biden was asked questions at his so-called press conference yesterday, where he had read the answers from a teleprompter. That means he was given the questions just like crooked Hillary. Never have I seen this before. He knew the questions and still couldn't answer them. Lamestream media being laughed at all over the world. He did his first press conference, I guess, almost 90 days, and he was reading the answers off the teleprompter. I've never seen that before. He doesn't know where he is, frankly. I watched this press conference yesterday. He's answering questions like this from a teleprompter. Biden was not given the answers in advance at his Delaware news conference on June 30th. CNN's Arlette Sanchez, who was one of the reporters present, and other reporters confirmed. Biden's campaign also said that the claim was false and that Biden did not read answers off the teleprompter. Politico reported that the teleprompters in the room appeared to be off during the questioning and answer portion of the event, as Biden's press secretary T.J. Ducklo told CNN they were. Ducklo called Trump's claim laughable, ludicrous, and a big fucking lie. The Associated Press noted that Biden was often looking directly at the reporter who asked him the question, and again, Biden did not get the questions ahead of time. Trump said of Obama and Biden, and today he's with Obama. President Obama, it only took him how long? A year and a half to endorse him? What did it take? A year and a half to endorse him? Even after he won, he didn't endorse him for so long. The fact is that Trump was lying about this part. Obama, who kept a low profile during the Democratic primary, endorsed Biden on April 14th of 2020, less than a week after Biden's last arrival. Senator Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race, and that was just under a year after Biden launched his campaign on April 25th of 2019. Trump said of Biden, well, he wants to defund and abolish the police because that's what he's being told to do. He's not making his own decisions. The radical left is doing this. I mean, they're telling them what to do. He wants to defund and abolish the police, and you see it. What they're doing in Minnesota. The fact is that Biden explicitly opposes the idea of defunding the police, and he has proposed nothing even close to abolishing that. Biden told CBS in June that no, I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness, and in fact are able to demonstrate they can protect the community and everybody in it. The Trump campaign has noted that Biden told a progressive activist that he's absolutely open to redirecting some funding, but the context made it unclear what he meant regardless. It was nothing remotely assembling the abolition of police. Biden's published criminal justice plan calls for $300 million investment in the community policing efforts, and including the hiring of more police officers. I don't know if you saw, Bernie Sanders said, my sole focus is now to take Joe Biden away way left. Facts first is that we cannot find any examples of Sanders saying his sole focus is moving Biden to the far left, and the spokesperson for both Sanders' campaign and Senate office said that they were unaware of any such quotes. Rather, Sanders has emphasized that while he does not that he does want progressive policy from Biden, he considers it a top priority for 45 to be defeated. Yep, I consider that a top priority too. For example, as a campaign spokesperson, Mike Casa noted that Sanders told the New Yorker in early June that it is not a great success that Biden and I have very serious political differences, but at this particular moment in history, what is most important is to defeat Trump, who, as you implied a moment ago, is literally a threat to American democracy and is moving this country not only in a dangerous way, but in an authoritarian way as well. Trump has got to be defeated, and in a variety of ways, I intend to play an active role in this progress. In April, soon after dropping out of the race, Sanders told late-night host Stephen Colbert that I hope to be able to work with Joe to make him into a more progressive direction. But he also said what I said from the first day that I announced my intention was to run for president. I would do everything I can to make sure that Donald Trump cannot be reelected. Moments after invoking Joe Biden and the Democrats, Trump said that they want to abolish ICE, our greatest people from ICE who send the roughest, toughest, meanest people that you've ever seen or heard. Biden does not want to abolish immigration and customs enforcement. Rather, his immigration plan calls for independent oversight over the ICE's activities, ensuring that ICE personnel abide by professional standards and are held accountable for the inhumane treatment and more resources for training ICE personnel. We shouldn't abolish ICE. We should reform the system. ICE is not the problem. The policies behind ICE are the problem, and that's easy enough to fix if the president knows what he or she is doing, Biden said during the Democratic primary campaign back in November of 2019. Joe Biden and the Democrats want to prosecute Americans for going to church, but not for burning a church. Joe Biden and the Democrats want to prosecute, and Trump had said this twice. The fact first is that there's no apparent basis for either the claim that Biden wants to prosecute churchgoers or the claim that he does not want to prosecute people for burning a church down. We could not find any comments from Biden in which he made any such statements. Neither could PolitiFact. Biden has expressed specific disapproval of deliberate fire-setting protests during the police brutality, saying in a statement that a protest against brutality like the killing of George Floyd are just as necessary, but burning down communities and needless destruction is not. Violence that endangers lives is not. Violence that guts and shudders because businesses that serve the community is not. Biden has generally expressed support for social distancing orders that have shut down numerous kinds of entities, including churches, but has not said that people should be prosecuted for attending church. He asked for a comment on the accuracy of Trump's claims. Biden campaign spokesperson Andrew Bates told CNN those should not bear false witness. Trump said that by testing for the coronavirus, we showcases 99%, which are totally harmless. The fact is that there is no basis for Trump's 99% figure. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany suggested later that Trump was referring specifically to the percentage of people with the coronavirus who died, telling reporters the fake president was noting the fact that the vast majority of Americans who contract coronavirus will come out on the other side of this. The known mortality rate in the U.S. was around 4% at the time that Trump even spoke about that. Even assuming that the true mortality rate is significantly lower, since experts believe many mild cases are going undetected, there is no basis for the claim that all but 1% of the cases cause no harm. I'm trying to figure out where the fake president gets that number, Dr. Anthony Fauci told the Financial Times. What I think happened is that someone told him that the general mortality rate is about 1%, and he interpreted, therefore, that 99% is not a problem. Then that's obviously not the case. A substantial percentage of people who survived the virus experience significant problems from headaches to deep fatigue to lung damage. Some require hospitalization, even if they do feel better days or weeks later. That is still harm in the short term. In addition, we don't yet have research on the long-term effects of the virus in people who aren't killed by it. Some survivors have experienced difficulties for months beyond the disappearance of their original symptoms. Fauci told FT, "I have never seen a virus or any pathogen that has a broad range of manifestations. Even if it doesn't kill you, even if it doesn't put you in the hospital, it can make you seriously ill." Asked why he decided in late January to impose his travel restrictions on China, Trump had said, "Well, I was seeing information that China, and the Wuhan in particular, was very heavily infected, and I just said, look, why are we doing this, and let's see," and nobody knew anything about it at that time. We didn't know it affected the elderly much more so than children. The fact is, while it is true that knowledge about COVID-19 was limited in January, indeed the world is still learning about the new virus even in July. It's not true that nobody knew anything about the virus or that anybody knew the elderly were disproportionately affected. On January 23rd, 8 days before Trump's administration announced its travel restrictions, the South China Morning Post ran a headline news that said, "Wuhan virus killing most of the elderly, those with previous health problems." Its sub-headlines were 2 bullet points. Almost half the fatalities were 80 years or older, all of them from Hubei province. Chinese authorities say that children have been infected but are not highly susceptible to the virus as the adults are. Also, before the administration announced its travel restrictions, the Washington Post reported that most people sick and killed by the virus have been elderly, and they had pre-existing conditions, like health issues anyway, and lived in the Hubei province, specifically its capital, Wuhan. And the New York Times quoted Columbia University epidemiology professor Dr. Ian Lipkin as saying, "The majority of fatal cases are elderly and have a chronic disease that would increase their susceptibility to the infectious disease. These were preliminary assessments, and yes, they can read, and that they were correct." Trump claimed in the July 2nd speech that the coronavirus crisis in the U.S. is getting under control, that the U.S. is getting rid of the flame. It's happening, and that we have some areas where we're putting out the flames or the fires, and that's working out well. The fact is, as government officials confirmed the week that Trump spoke, the pandemic situation in the U.S. is getting worse. It was not a matter of isolated outbreaks, and the problem was not being extinguished. The U.S. had set a single-day record for confirmed coronavirus cases the day prior to Trump's comments, hitting 50,000 for the first time, and then set another record the day that Trump spoke. As of the day he spoke, 37 states were seeing increases in the rate of confirmed new cases of the coronavirus, and it wasn't just mild cases. Dr. Robert Redfield, the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, said, "For the governor's needs, the relationship with the governors is very good. We made a call. The dumbass Mike Pence made a call just yesterday and said, 'What do you need?' Not one governor needed anything. You don't need anything." The fact is, we don't know what the governors had said to the dumbass Mike Pence on this particular phone call, but it's not true that governors or states more broadly do not have any more needs from the federal government. We reached out to 48 governors' offices asking if Trump's claim was true. 43 did not respond. The office of Republican South Dakota, Kristi Noem, said that the claim is accurate with regard to Noem. The office of the Republican Georgia Governor Brian Kemp said officials are accessible at every turn, and we have received countless supplies from our federal partners as we battle the COVID-19. But 3 Democratic governors representing Washington State, Colorado, and Michigan told us that they are seeking more from the federal government. Days later, the Democratic governor of Illinois told Congress he needs that they want more as well. The office of the Democratic Washington Governor Jay Inslee said that they have an outstanding request to the Trump administration to use full authority under the Defense Production Act to compel production here in the United States of the supplies of frontline workers and other employees that need to stay safe on the job. We are hearing from businesses and workers across Washington that they're struggling to access personal protective equipment on the private market and are subject to price gouging and being forced to use extreme conservative measures to stretch limited supplies over long periods of time, the communications director Tara Lee said in an email. Democratic Colorado Governor Jared Polis wants additional federal help obtaining the personal protective equipment and testing supplies and help with preparation for flu season, said the press secretary Connor Cahill. Cahill noted that Polis sent a June letter to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention requesting assistance with the flu season. The flu season is going to tax our PPE supplies, and as those giving vaccines are going to need the medical grade masks, perhaps shields and gloves to ensure that they are protected from the COVID-19. While we have much better access to PPE than we did before, we are going to need help obtaining more, Polis wrote in the letter. Additionally, we know we will have much better results if we can deploy health workers across the state as well as launch a strong mobilization and outreach campaign. Democratic Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer also wants more from the federal government, said Press Secretary Tiffany Brown. The federal government must continue to help with the production and distribution of testing supplies and financial support, Brown said, but it's also crucial for Congress to pass additional financial support for states like Michigan so we can maintain essential services that our families and small businesses rely on every day as we recover from this crisis. Because you know that the country has to get back to work. There've been protests now, and these protests are paid for. Do you see the signs? They're all made, many of them. The fact is that there is no. This is a conspiratorial nonsense. Yes, there were nationwide street protests in the wake of the death of George Floyd in May, but it is clearly not true that all of the tens of thousands of the participants were paid for, or that all of the protests themselves were paid by. And although it is also not true that a genuine protester would never get a sign printed at a shop, we should note that many of the protesters carried handmade signs. The protester in Buffalo, yeah, remember this one. A Buffalo protester was shoved down by police, and Trump called him an Antifa provocator. The 75-year-old Martin Gugino was pushed away after appearing to scan police communications in order to black out the equipment. The fact is that Trump's allegations are baseless. There was no evidence that Gugino, a long-time peaceful protester, or on issues like police brutality, nuclear weapons, and climate change, according to the New York Times, was affiliated with Antifa, a loose collection of self-described anti-fascists, or was somehow trying to black out police communications equipment. There was also no basis for Trump's suggestion that Gugino embellished his fall after he was pushed by the Buffalo police on June 4th. Gugino was hospitalized for injuries, and his lawyer told CNN more than a week and a half after the incident that he had fractured his skull and was unable to walk at this time. The 2 officers involved in the incident have been charged with assault, and they have pleaded not guilty. Trump said of the St. John's Episcopal Church, outside of which he had a controversial photo up on June 1st, John Adams was the first parishioner. Was he the 5th or 6th, whatever, you'll figure it out. The fact is that James Madison, not John Adams, was the first president to attend the church, which is a short walk from the White House, and Adams was the 2nd president of the United States. Minnesota and the National Guard on 6 separate occasions, Trump said of the strongest suggested that he was responsible for Minnesota's use of the Minnesota National Guard to deal with the violence that occurred during the protests, many of which were peaceful. After the May killing of George Floyd in the custody of Minneapolis police. For example, Trump said in the June 17th interview, I brought it out 5 days after they started, he wouldn't use the National Guard. The fact is that the Democratic Minnesota Governor, Tim Walz, not Trump, was the one who deployed the Minnesota National Guard. Walz first activated the Guard on May 28th, even more than 7 hours before Trump publicly threatened to deploy the Guard himself. Walz's office says the governor activated the Guard in response to requests from officials in Minneapolis and St. Paul who happened to be Democrats as well, and it's not true that there were 5 days of unrest before Walz called out the guard. Violent protests began 2 days prior to Walz's decision. It is theoretically possible that pressure from Trump contributed to a Walz decision to activate the entire Minnesota National Guard on May 30th, 2 days after his initial activation of a smaller number of Guard troops, but no evidence has emerged to prove that that was the case, and Walz's office says that Trump had nothing to do with either of the governor's decisions. Monuments, Trump, and the law, since imposing a very powerful 10-year prison sentence on those that vandalize at monuments, statues, etc., with many people being arrested all over our country, the vandalism has completely stopped. And now we've enacted an act, a very specific statute and monument acts that puts people in jail for 10 years if they do anything to even try to deface one of our monuments or statues. And he says, I want to publicly thank all of our law enforcement. The jobs you've done is incredible. We signed a bill if you play with our monuments, or that basically you get 10 years. The fact is that Trump did not enact a law, sign, or bill, or impose any new penalties for damaging monuments. He issued an executive order that directed the Attorney General to prioritize investigations and prosecutions of monument destruction cases, and declared that it is U.S. policy to prosecute such cases to the fullest extent permitted by federal law. But that order was not a law itself and did not create any punishment. Rather, the order simply laid out penalties that exist under current laws, including one that allows for a maximum of 10 years in prison for damaging or attempting to damage monuments commemorating the service of any person or persons in the armed forces of the United States. Under the executive order I signed last week, this is what he claimed, pertaining to the Veterans Memorial Preservation and Recognition Act. He claims that people will get a minimum of 10 years for defacing federal statues. Trump was exaggerating. 10 years is a maximum term of imprisonment, not a minimum term. Under the law he mentioned, the Veterans Memorial Preservation and Recognition Act was passed in 2003 under Bush. The law says that damaging or attempting to damage a statue or monument that commemorates the service of any persons or persons in the armed forces of the United States is subject to a fine, imprisonment of not more than 10 years or both. And the June executive order, Trump mentioned in these remarks, also makes it clear that 10 years is a maximum, not a minimum. Yeah, but it goes on forever, yeah.